Just a warning, this episode contains topics and/or language that could be heavy or triggering and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody, I'm Zoe.
And I'm Chandi.
And this is Bound by the Cloak. Suicide, suicidal ideation, and mental health are subjects that many don't like to discuss out in the open in depth. We know that people go through depression and suicidal thoughts, but these topics make people uncomfortable. Some may not know what to do or say if someone expresses that they feel depressed or suicidal. They may unknowingly dismiss someone's feelings or even their symptoms. Saying someone is selfish because they're depressed or suicidal can be quite damaging. When someone may be suicidal, depressed, or going through a mental health emergency, there are some things that you can do to help. Let them know that you care. Ask them what you can do to help. Try and hear them out. One of the biggest things you can do is just be there to listen. Even if it's difficult for you to hear, it may be difficult for them to even talk about. Helping them could also just be spending time with them or running errands for them. Also, not everyone who is depressed is suicidal. Depression isn't just being sad. There's a lot more to it than that.
September is Suicide Prevention Month, and we decided to speak with James Donaldson about his work spreading awareness about suicide prevention. If you don't know who James Donaldson is, well, you're about to learn. James Donaldson is a retired professional basketball player who has played in the US and overseas. Drafted into the NBA in 1979 by the Seattle Supersonics, he also played for the Clippers, the Mavericks, the New York Knicks, and the Utah Jazz. James, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, and happy to do it.
So, how are you? How is Seattle?
Things are well. We've had a beautiful summer up here. As per usual, the summer is just the best time in the Northwest. So it's just been outstanding, and my favorite time of the year in Seattle. And this is home for me for about 40 years.
You know, we know you were a professional basketball player for about, 20 years? Did, 14 years, I think, in the NBA, and you played overseas.
Yes.
Can you tell us how you wound up in Seattle and a little bit about your career and your background?
You know, Seattle was the team that drafted me out of Washington State University. So I was kind of a local boy up here going to Washington State, which is about a 5-hour drive from Seattle, but it's right up here. And Washington State and University of Washington are the two major universities in the state of Washington. So the Sonics drafted me in 1979 when I graduated. That happened to be the year that they won their one and only NBA championship as well. You know, me being the young kid on the block and just kind of still a lot to learn and all of that. There was no room at the end, so to speak. They had all the championship quality guys and they had just won the championship. So I elected my first year after I got drafted by the Sonics to go overseas to Italy and play my first professional season in Italy, where I can actually play a lot, play the whole game and really get my game better, get more experience, which I wouldn't have gotten sitting on the Sonics bench and trying to squeeze in every 10 games or so. So it turned out to be a really good move for me. Against my youthful inexperience and stubbornness, I listened to my coaches and listened to my agent at the time telling me this would be the best move for me. So I'm really glad I listened to them. My dad was in the Air Force for 20 years and stationed over in England when I was born. So he was there for about 4 years. I was born, one of my siblings was born there. And then we came on back to California in the States, where I grew up pretty much from 3 years old on. And so don't know much about England, don't really remember much. But California, the Bay Area especially, where he was stationed at the Vallejo Air Force Base. And he did 20 years in the Air Force Base, 20 years in the Postal Service. A long time working guy. He was always there for me, stayed, took care of the family, took care of the house, did his fatherly duties and husbandly duties, and just, I think, raised a great family for all of us.
Can you tell us about your work that you did with the Donaldson Clinic?
Yes. Well, I had a real devastating knee injury when I was playing in the NBA back in 1988. A rare injury, a ruptured patella tendon, which is your big major tendon in your knee that you need for running and jumping and doing all the things basketball players do. Kind of doom and gloom for a while. I didn't know if I'd ever come back or ever walk normally again because it really is your main stabilizing tendon. But through, great surgeons who put it all back together again, and all the physical therapists and athletic trainers, nutritionalists I worked with throughout the time, I was really inspired at that point to say, wow, if I cannot play anymore, and I think I was 32 years old at the time, if I can't play, what am I going to do? I had my degree from Washington State, sociology, psychology. So I was always in the teaching, counseling realm, in the classroom kind of setting. But this really opened my eyes to entrepreneurship and business opportunities. I really set out to become a physical therapist at first. So during the off seasons, I would go to the University of Washington and pick up all my prerequisites for physical therapy. Did that for 5 or 6 off seasons. Got very close to signing up to go to physical therapy school. But by then, the business had started up in 1989, a year after my injury. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. It really helped me transition from playing to not playing anymore and having something really substantial and something I was passionate about to kind of flow right into. And so that's how I got started with the Donaldson Clinic. I never did become a therapist, but I was surrounded by a lot of great therapists. Throughout our 28 years we ran the business, dozens of therapists and athletic trainers and physical therapist assistants, and of course, a great administrative staff. It really was a team effort throughout the 28 years. They kept it going for the first 10 years with me still going off and playing basketball 8 or 9 months a year. And I'd come back during the summer, go to school, and actually get involved with the business. So it was ready for me to step right in once I retired in 2000. And that's what I was really looking forward to doing after so many years of playing basketball.
28 years is a really long time. It's amazing that it was going for so long. And also, psychology and sociology, it seems different for an athlete to major in. Usually I hear like communications.
I've always enjoyed learning. I've always valued education. And I always was fascinated by people and interactions between people, different cultures. When I lived in Spain, Italy, and Greece playing basketball, I learned Spanish and Italian and Greek, learned about the great civilizations. All my friends would pull me aside, tell me about the great Greek civilization or the Italian empires and the Spanish empire. So I heard this stuff all the time. But I just soaked it up. I love learning about cultures and different people. And that's where, I think my sociology interest stem from, even at an early age, just wanting to know more about the world and the people that make up this world.
Back in 2015, it's widely known you had a major health emergency, open heart surgery. And in fact, you wound up having 5 surgeries, if I'm not mistaken.
4 major surgeries in 5 years.
4. Wow.
So It was really a tough run there for a while. Touch and go with the first surgery for sure. It was life saving, but God's grace, He pulled me through and I'm still here.
Yeah, with something like this, medical emergencies and unexpected health issues, that can happen to anyone, unfortunately, and it can have a serious effect on one's life. And I think it's safe to say that, most of us would be unprepared for something like that. So how did that affect you?
Well, it did affect me in a big way, especially since I was up until that point. I was 57 years old at the time, still very active, still running 3 or 4 days a week, 3 or 4 miles at a time with ease. I just was in great shape, took care of myself, kept my weight down, been a vegetarian for about 40 years. So I ate well and exercised in the gym 4 or 5 days a week. So I was 57 and still in really good shape. So this heart issue just kind of came out of nowhere. Doctors think it was probably genetic and just kind of I was predisposed to this happening at this point in my life, but they think I probably had the factors or the DNA structure genetically to have this happen at this point in my life. Luckily, we caught it in time. Luckily, common sense prevailed, and I decided to go to the doctor instead of continuing to play golf on the golf course with my friends. And otherwise, I would have fell out there on the golf course, and it probably would have been too late.
All of this had to take a tremendous toll on you, not just physically, but mentally as well. And how did you cope with that?
Well, that was the hard part. That was the unexpected and unprepared part for me, because here I was, fit as can be, very independent, pushing my body to just do things that most normal folks don't push their bodies to that point. And a lot of it comes from your mind determination of just saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to get through it, and you just go and get it done. But when you are physically incapacitated, you just cannot do what you used to do. That really plays on your mind quite a bit. And so not being able to walk up a flight of stairs, without hanging onto the rails, or being totally out of breath, not being able to lift heavy packages anymore, all those kind of things that you just take for granted. I was not able to do those things for those 4 surgeries in 5 years. And still, probably only about 70% of what I used to be, even now, almost 10 years later. Don't know if I ever get back to 100%, but, 70% is still good. I do have some limitations as far as, walking too far without being fatigued, my legs especially, and feeling out of breath, shortness of breath, without being too fatigued in the gym when I'm working out in the gym. I'll go a good 40, 45 minutes, and that's really about it before everything just fatigues and you're just tired. But before all this, I was in the gym 2 hours at a time every single day with no problem. So I've learned my limitations. I know what I can do. I know when to stop, take a break, rest. Just came back from an international trip over to Greece about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And even in the airport, I was in the Frankfurt airport, going from gate 3 all the way to gate 40. And it was like a 35-minute walk. And there was no way I could do it, especially in time to catch the plane. The plane was about ready to leave. So I had to get into a wheelchair and just have somebody push me. Those are the things you just need to be prepared for and be willing to do, and not try to be a he-man and push your way through this stuff. But, I think I've always been a person who's been very adaptable to whatever the situation is, whatever country I'm living in, whatever the circumstance is. I think just being an oversized person in this world anyway, you have to be adaptable. Doorways and chairs and, automobiles and everything else. Yes.
I was telling Chandi the other day, I said like a normal door opening is 80 inches, which is 6'8".
That's right.
And you're 7'2".
Yes, got to duck down, but you don't see too many knots on my forehead, so I'm doing pretty good.
That's good.
In terms of adaptability, before experiencing all of this, what were your thoughts on mental health, depression, and suicide?
I knew nothing of it. I think being an athlete, especially a competitive person, those things just don't cross your mind. Mental weakness, mental struggles, mental anything, because your mind is really what propels you to do so many things that we do. Whether you're an athlete or a person in the military, at war, you just push beyond the normal limits of things because you will yourself to do that. And so the mental aspect came when everything had fallen apart around me, around in my world, not only my physical health, but, my financial health, my home, my personal relationship with my wife at the time, finances, the business, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it's just one of those things, one thing after another. My mother passed away during this time as well. And I just kept thinking, wow, when's the next shoe going to drop? When's the next shoe going to drop? And then also I was having thoughts of ending it all myself, the suicidal thoughts and ideations, which really gets kind of a scary place. That's when I started, learning and knowing about what mental health challenges were all about. Got a lot of good help with my doctors and mental health professional friends and my good close friends who stayed around with me. But, as I made my way through all of that, 2018 was the worst year. At the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, the darkness finally started lifting up a little bit, depression, anxiety, and all. And that's when I got inspired to think about starting my own nonprofit foundation. I even heard God's voice telling me, hey, James, you didn't know anything about mental health issues before. Now you know. And now you get out there and you use your platform to speak and talk and help people understand that this could happen to anybody. It happened to you, and it happens to millions of people every year. Unfortunately, millions of people take their lives as well. But get to them before they get to that point and let them know that there is hope and there is a tomorrow and there is a future. But they got to get through the darkness first.
It can be really difficult for those who have not had any experiences with suicide or suicidal ideation to talk about it. It can also be difficult for people who have those things to talk about them as well. What do you think are some ways that we can get people to discuss them more openly?
Well, I think getting back to what we're getting away from, close, intimate, personal relationships, that was the norm 20, 30 years ago, before the internet, before social media, before all these other things, where you actually, went on a walk with your friend, and you sat down and had lunch and coffee and actually looked at each other and talked to each other. That's what we need to get back to. But these last 20, 30 years, we've become more connected than ever, but ironically, we are more disconnected than ever at the same time. And so we don't feel comfortable with those close, intimate, personal relationships that we used to have and that we need to have. Human beings we're social beings. We need each other. We need to be social. The worst thing that you can do to a prisoner in prison is put them in isolation for 23 out of 24 hours a day. That's the worst thing you can do to a person because it's pure torture. So many of us find ourselves living in that kind of world. The U.S. Surgeon General came out last year and said loneliness is our number one mental health crisis right now. Loneliness. So many of us are living a life all by ourselves, or even if we're in the same house with somebody, we're not connected with them like we used to be. So that's what I'm trying to get people to do, is just really be able to talk and feel comfortable expressing your feelings. There's no shame in saying that you need help. We talk about in mental health circles that it's okay not to be okay, but you have to let somebody know, because from the outside, you can't tell when somebody's going through a difficult time. They've got to be able to show you and tell you before you can really be there to help them as much as you need to help them.
I find it a little bit ironic and surprising that you were saying that for you, mental health and depression and suicide, that was kind of new, because I would think that, well, as a layperson who's not athletic at all, you hear about athletes have such a huge focus on mental strength and mental health. So I thought the training would be part of that. They would talk about mental health and depression, but it seems like that's not happening with athletes.
No, not when your world goes upside down, because I think the fear most people have when they go through mental health challenges is being judged. Yeah, I think the judging from other folks that something's wrong with you, that come on, you can get over this, just shake it off, tomorrow will be better. But this mental health stuff is deep and insidious, and it really can rack into a person's world for years. Some people are in depression for dozens of years. Hopefully they're getting help. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. And if one health professional doesn't help you, you have to keep shopping around and find one that works for you and not give up on this. There's still quite a few things we don't talk about very easily in society. Most people don't talk about their drinking problem they may have, or their drug problem they may have, or if they're a sexual predator and they're labeled such, they're not going to talk about these things. And the family doesn't talk about it either. There's a lot of things that people don't talk about. But this suicide thing is taking 50,000 lives a year in America, over 750,000 lives worldwide every single year. That's a lot of people. And that's just the ones who complete the task, unfortunately, of taking their life. It's 10 times that. Think about it. 4 or 5 times it attempted. So it's a big, big problem. And especially with our young people who just don't have the life experience to know that tomorrow's going to be a better day. They just don't know. Not when you're 12 and 13, 14 years old. You just don't know. So the work I'm doing now is going around to schools and letting those kids know that, hey, I made it through, and it was very dark and desperate for me.
Yeah.
Didn't think there was a future, didn't think there was a tomorrow, but here I am speaking to you today. I hung in there and I made it through with the help that I want you guys to reach out for too.
And I think a lot of times people feel alone when it comes to, suicide and suicidal ideation. Like whatever they're going through, they think it's just them going through it. And that can be hard. And obviously, they're not talking to other people to find out if anybody else is also going through something similar. It's very much, I'm going through something in particular.
That's right. That's right. I felt very alone too. Even though I was seeing my doctor on occasion, but those days between those appointments were a long, long stretch. Saw my counselor once a week. But again, that's a long week between appointments. I had my friends checking in on me, or I'd call them. But as soon as you put the phone down,
Exactly. Yeah.
there goes that loneliness every night when you get ready to go to bed and you're all by yourself.
When you're alone with your thoughts, that's when things get kind of wild.
Yes. We try to remind people you are not alone. This happens to millions of people every year who think about it, millions who actually attempt it, and hundreds of thousands that actually kill themselves every single year. And you don't ever need to get to that point. I don't want anybody to get to that point.
So, why do you think it's important to talk to the youth about these issues?
Well, our youth are really living in a world now where they're having a phone based childhood. There's a great book out now called The Anxious Generation. Anxious Generation. But he is talking about how our kids today, since 2008, the advent of the smartphone. So these kids now are 14, 15 years old. They all grew up with a smartphone. And online, you get a lot of bullying, you get a lot of cyber stalking, you get a lot of just all kind of negative stuff that comes at you. And young people just don't know how to handle that kind of stuff. Even grown-ups don't know how to handle a lot of it, but young people for sure. And it's especially damaging and detrimental to young girls who go through their phase of trying to be the prettiest, trying to be the thinnest, trying to be cutest, the most boyfriends, the most likes. Girls are much more in the comparison game of each other, whereas boys are into the blood and guts and the violence of video games and shoot 'em up games. But the girls are the ones that are getting damaged because this really plays with their psyche a lot more as they grow up not feeling worthy of themselves. And girls attempt suicide 5 times more than boys do.
I think that's fascinating. I did not know that.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
a lot to it. So that's why I'm really talking to the young people, because you have to meet them where they are. You know, they're not going to be all of a sudden with a mind of a 50-year-old. All of a sudden, they're a mind of a 13-year-old. So you got to meet them where they are. So I got my presentation scaled down to a level they understand. I share my story with them. We've got some basketball video highlights of me playing, so it oohs and ahs them and gets them going, and they really get into it from being on top of the world to being totally at the bottom of everything and then bouncing back to where I am now. That's my journey. That's my story. And they understand that because I'm not just like another teacher or the principal or somebody coming in and speaking to the assembly. And here we go again. No, this is James. He actually went through this. He actually went through what I'm going through right now, as a lot of kids would think.
It seems like you've been working with young people for some time, and it's great because it really does need to start from a young age, kind of
Yeah.
having role models and also just understanding that, yeah, there's this person who had this previous life, but I can relate to him. Yeah, what are the challenges working with young people for you?
I don't really find any. I don't think I've ever found any. I've worked with young people throughout my professional career. Even coming out of the university, I was visiting schools and involved with reading programs and those kind of things. I'm going to an elementary school this coming Thursday. We're talking about a cultural exchange program between the United States and China, and letting the kids know that there's people around the world just like them who would love to come and see them, and they would love for you to go see them. So it's an exchange. So, but kids, I think as long as you're honest with them, as long as you're open with them, you show a little vulnerability to them as well. They get you. They understand those kind of things, and that's what it takes to really connect with young people. I find afterwards, so many of them come up. They really want to talk to me. They'll pull me aside and just say, "Hey," in a whisper to me that they're suicidal right now and they don't know what to do. And that's the most heartbreaking thing ever listen from young people. So all I can do is just point them in the right direction. Let the principal know or the school counselor know that this young child needs help. Please check in on them. But that's how comfortable they feel with telling me their story, whereas they don't feel that comfortable talking to other people about it.
When you were younger, do you think your outlook on mental health would have been different if you had someone like you, like a James Donaldson, going around and talking about these issues?
Perhaps. I was just a young, typical boy growing up on the playgrounds, rough and tumble, and all the rest of those things that boys will be boys kind of things. So it takes boys a little while longer to kind of grasp that. There's more than just rough and tumble play for boys, that we can be in touch with our emotions and we can be more sensitive. But most boys don't grow up doing that and being that until they get older and they learn those skills. And unfortunately, not enough men really ever learn those skills. And so they struggle with a lot of these things as well. The men do too. But I think it's good for boys to see an older man talk about these kind of things, show some emotion, shed some tears, and just really, really connect with them that way. They may not change their behavior right then, but at least it plants a seed that it's okay to cry. It's okay to share your emotions and share your feelings about things.
I think it's really interesting to mention the gender component, and I'm curious as to, do you incorporate the cultural component? Is that something that you're kind of aware of, or you're learning more on your own to understand how it kind of occurs in different cultures besides the gender piece?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Because, all around the world, kids are kids. I mean, boys are boys and girls are girls all the way around the world. The cultural piece comes in as they mature a little bit. They start to know who they are, where they're from, where their families are from, what country they're living in. That's when the cultural piece comes in. And also some of the cultural norms and the cultural expectations and things as well, the traditions. But when you're dealing with elementary and middle school and high school kids, they're all pretty much the same throughout. I envy girls because you guys grow up being okay to cry, being okay to cry on each other's shoulder and share your feelings or have your secrets. Boys don't do that. So I wish more boys could do that and be that. Maybe that's where we're getting to eventually. But still, it's a big world out there and 8 billion people, most of it still male dominated cultures, that there's a lot of learning to be done still to get to this point. So I just hope that no matter how rough and tough a guy feels he is, that he will, when he needs to, reach out for help. And a lot of guys don't even tell their significant others or spouses that they're having a problem. They don't tell their boss. They don't really have a best friend to talk to. Most guys' conversations are, sports and girls and cars and money, and that's it. We don't even know a lot of time his spouse's name or how many kids he might have. We just don't know. We don't talk about it. Guys are very different, but we can be better, and we need to do better.
That's very different from women's
Yeah.
conversations with friends. Everything about friends,
That-
even about their boyfriends and husbands.
that's right. That's right. We have no clue.
I don't know your social security number, Zoe.
Well, you wouldn't know
Yeah.
that.
We draw a line at some point, James.
Okay, yes, there are lines that we draw.
There are. I'm sure there are. Yes, that's okay. You guys got it going on much more than the guys do. So that's
Tell us more about your organizations and programs and the work that you do.
well, I did start up my foundation, nonprofit 501c3 called Your Gift of Life Foundation. And with this, it basically gives me a platform that I can do my speaking engagements from, that I can be a conduit of resources from all around the country, all around the world even. Folks see my site online and they'll contact me, send me articles, send me content, asking me if it's relevant to post on my helpful resources page that I've created dozens and dozens of links on. And I'm more than happy to do it. If it pertains to mental health, it goes up there. For veterans who are struggling mightily with mental health, homelessness, addiction, substance abuse, domestic violence, all those things are all mental health derivatives. And so I'm more than happy. I never turn anybody down if it's relevant to what we're doing. And so that's what Your Gift of Life Foundation is currently. What we hope to do in the future is to start up a scholarship fund, trying to get more boys and men into the mental health professions. Right now, the mental health profession is 88% women. And this is a big reason why boys and men won't go to counseling. They just don't feel comfortable sitting across the table and being that vulnerable to a woman they don't know, or taking directions from a woman they don't know, or maybe not even respect. But they will do that with a guy. We need more men into the mental health profession. In the United States, there's about 100,000 mental health professionals. Only 3% are of color. So that's only 3,000 of them around the 50 states that we have. And less than 0.5%, 500, are African American. And this is a big reason why communities of color won't reach out for mental health help when they need to. They just don't feel there's anybody that represents them or looks like them or they can relate to across the table from them. And so these are the things that I'm trying to do with our foundation. And I know it's just going to be a little smidgen, a little drop in the bucket once we're all said and done. But if I can just get 2 or 3 or 4 kids every year into the scholarship path to degree in mental health, that would be a huge accomplishment for me. And hopefully the legacy of my foundation after I'm long gone continues on, and we keep getting more and more boys into the mental health profession.
And what kind of places do you go to besides schools?
Yes.
So I know you mentioned that.
I've been to quite a few different places. We have a lot of native tribes up here in Washington. And so the Native American population is really suffering quite a bit on their reservations. So to go to reservations and speak to those kids as well, the community even. I speak to businesses and corporations, business groups. My passion really is for young people. And so I've been to schools where they might have 150 kids from K through 12, a very, very small school district. The graduating class might be 22 kids, but just to go and speak to them. And these are typically really remote rural areas that don't have a lot of resources. But the kids all have grown up together from the time they were in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. They know each other very well. And ironically, it's interesting to see that they are much more open to sharing what they're going through in front of their peers than the large city school kids are. There's that close-knit bonding or bind of a small community like that, where everybody knows everybody anyway. They may not have known somebody who's going through a struggling time, but they're not afraid to let people know that during these kind of talks that I have with them. So that's been a real joy working with the very, very small communities like that.
Yeah, I would have thought it would be the opposite, almost like let's
Yes.
keep it contained because everybody's going to know our issue.
Yeah, you would think. I remember
Yeah.
one young girl, she's probably 12, 13 years old. She told me she was thinking about suicide and killing herself because she's transsexual. And she said this in front of all of her peers. I'm like, wow.
Wow.
Maybe they knew that already, but maybe they didn't know she was struggling like that. But she put that out there. The transsexual, the LGBTQ communities, they have a high incident of suicides, suicide attempts. A lot of folks feel marginalized, and this is where we have to keep on reaching out and meeting them where they are, because chances are they're really not going to come and find us until it's like the 11th hour and it's almost too late.
Have you found that kids these days are much more open to discussing things and much more sensitive than kids in the past?
In a way, depends on the setting. I think it depends on the setting. What helps the kids feel more comfortable with me is they see my story, they know my story, and then I'm there talking about my story. So we've just played a 5-minute video that gives my little background. You might have seen it on my website. It really breaks down what I went through, the highlights of being a basketball NBA guy, and the businesses and all the stuff, all the successes, and then it all falls apart. That tells a pretty compelling story. These kids get that. They understand. And so I haven't had much challenge as far as getting kids to talk. We do interactive questions and answers at the end. There's always a lot of very insightful questions from the kids. And we encourage them to talk and just ask. There's no dumb question. There's no such thing. Just ask your question and I'm going to answer it. So I don't think I've had those kind of challenges, but I think it does depend on the topic. It depends on the setting. Comfortable, safe environment during these assemblies for the kids. They're free to go out if they need to. If they break down in tears or cry, get emotional, they're free to go and go to the bathroom, go outside in the hallway. Nobody's holding them in there. We let them know that, hey, this is a highly emotional topic. Some of you might be triggered, but don't feel bad. You need to go take care of yourself. Go take care.
That's amazing. I mean, I never had anything like that from when I was a kid, whether it was middle school, high school, nobody ever came to the school and discussed suicide or mental health or depression.
Back in the day, I think this is all of that anxious generation we're talking about, the last 14, 15 years. Yeah. And these are the kids now in middle school and high school. Whole different time that we're talking about.
I think people are kind of realizing the fact that because you don't talk about something doesn't mean that it's not happening. It is happening. So why not just address it and get in front of it?
Absolutely. I tell folks, hey, here I am, the biggest and strongest guy in the room in this assembly, and I'm tearing up and crying in front of you. I want you to see what I went through. And I want you to feel, even when I talk about it now with you, I'm still getting emotional. So the emotions are still there. The feelings are still real. I think if it ever leaves me, then my job is done and I need to move on to something else. But as long as it keeps tugging at me and bringing these emotions about, I've got work to do.
What would you move on to? Golf?
No, that's way too slow for me. I'm not an avid golfer. I play every now and then with the guys, but every couple months, whatever.
It's a really slow sport.
It seems like the most boring thing on the planet.
Hold on a second. It's not boring. It's
Yeah,
just slow.
it's very slow. It takes all day. I just played last Tuesday.
That
It
sounds
took,
boring, right?
I only played 9 holes. They want to go
That's
18.
that's only half of it. I mean,
Yes, they played the rest of the day. They're still playing. No, I don't have that kind of time. I think increased traveling would be my thing. Just wave a wand and say, hey, because I've made so many great friends around the world that I would just love to, just like I did going to Greece a couple weeks ago. I played in Greece back in the early 90s and mid 90s for a couple years. Friends I hadn't seen in 30 years. And I just wanted to go see them. And I had my birthday over there. My birthday month was August. And we had a big, big celebration, seeing everybody. And it was just so great. I don't need to see the ancient ruins in Athens. I need to see my friends.
Because they're around. The ruins are around too, but
No, I love my time abroad. I went kicking and screaming, but once I got there, I'm like, what am I kicking and screaming about? This is a great life.
yeah, and Greece is a beautiful place.
It is. Next summer, hopefully back to Spain and Italy.
Nice.
Yeah, so hopefully I'm starting to save my little pennies now and see if I can put that together.
traveling, like you said, it exposes you to new people, new thinking.
It does.
So August was your birthday month, and September is an important month too. So what's going on?
This is our National Suicide Prevention Month, September, and we are starting to make more and more announcements. I just posted a couple videos on social media today about September being National Suicide Prevention Month. Got several other little videos I'll be posting through the month. So I just want to keep the awareness up there that we don't have to wait for September or for May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, to talk about mental health. We can talk, and we should talk about it every single day of the year, especially if you need to talk about it. Don't wait for these couple months. Talk about it anytime.
What sort of programs and events do you see organizations or maybe your organizations doing?
Because I started my foundation 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, the first couple years was pretty low key, just adding some meat to the bones and just getting the content together and things like that. We haven't done events per se, but I do want to get to a point maybe next year, 2025, to actually have an event where we bring the community together. Maybe do something like a walk for mental health or a golf tournament, which is always popular during the summertime, a raffle or an auction. Here in Seattle, we're blessed with all the professional sports teams, except the NBA. We hope the NBA comes back one day. But we've got football, basketball, women's basketball, soccer, everything else, baseball. And it's a big, big sporting town. So to put together some type of auction and to raffle the information or raffle the prizes off, raise money, fundraising kind of things. But again, it's all about creating awareness. I want to start up a podcast as well where I'm talking about mental health and the different aspects of it on a regular basis, perhaps weekly or a couple times a week for sure, getting an occasional guest on as well. So that's how you do it. It's just a little bit by little bit. So you can't take it all on at once, but you just do what you can and try to make a difference.
I know that you ran for mayor of Seattle twice. So it's 2009 and 2021.
Correct.
I was wondering, I guess, what kind of change were you looking to see in Seattle?
My background being one of business and community involvement, education, I really wanted Seattle to step up and be better as far as the business community. Seattle had become business unfriendly for several years, leading up to the pandemic especially. And we've got all the major corporations here, but they move out of Seattle into the suburbs of Seattle, taking their tax dollars with them and everything else. We've got Amazon up here, we've got Boeing, we've got Starbucks, got Microsoft, Google. They're all up here as well. And they provide a tremendous employment hub for the tech sector, but Seattle was becoming very unfriendly to them, unfairly taxing them extra harshly because of high incomes and things like that, and just forcing them out of Seattle. So I wanted to bring all those things back. Homeless situation is huge in Seattle. We've got ordinances on the books that homeless are not allowed to camp out in public spaces, but we don't enforce. And so I was coming in that kind of pro-business, solutions to homelessness and those kind of things. So,
well, at least you tried.
It's all you can do.
Yeah.
All you can do. Yeah. I ran for
Yeah.
city council as well, 2019. And this was kind of a personal challenge to myself. I was just coming out of my own mental health challenges and struggles. And I just wanted to put myself out there and challenge myself a little bit, regain a purpose in life, which I had lost all purpose throughout those years leading up to that. And that gave me something really to drive towards and to work on and to have a real purpose to try to contribute back to my city again. So that was one of my first steps to really getting back on top of things.
In terms of like politics, you tried, you took the shot. No pun intended.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. And I don't want to say it's over for sure, but I don't think the time's right in Seattle. We'll see.
Yeah.
And you're
We'll see.
busy with the youth education programs, the foundation, the organization. So, yeah.
I am, but I could do so much more with those things, and other folks
That's
who are
true.
doing things from City Hall really do a big difference.
So, is your work mostly local, or do you go across the state, across the country?
I've stayed locally and regionally, just in the state of Washington is where I work. So we have almost 1,000 different high schools and 2,000 or 3,000 middle schools and 5,000 or 10,000 elementary schools in the state. So there's plenty of work for me to do just to go around. And on average, I averaged, maybe 3 schools a month that I'm speaking to. And you can get anywhere in the state of Washington. The furthest you have to drive is about a 5-hour drive across the state and come back. So you can do that in one day. And I do that in one day if I need to. So yeah, I just stay locally. Since the pandemic, this international flight I was on to Greece was the only time I've flown since the pandemic broke out. So I'm not in a big hurry to jump on airplanes if I don't need to.
I completely understand.
I'm going to get into online courses and things. I was just speaking to a fellow today that was giving me some advice on how to get some content around the work that I'm doing with mental health and create an online course with that, different modules and things to help people along that journey back to self-sustainability and a healthy mindset. So I've got tons of content that I've accumulated over the years that I'm going to start working on that, looking for online courses, and then eventually probably online coaching as well, especially for men. Besides kids, men are my next sweet spot, my passion. I know how much better we could be if we just worked at it and just didn't default into just being regular old guys. We could do better than that. And we need to. Most guys, when they run into any kind of challenging situations, instead of talking about it, they internalize it. They keep it to themselves. They drink to excess. They drug to excess, gamble to excess, destroying his relationships, destroying his family, all to cover the pain that he's going through instead of talking to somebody. Guys are action oriented. And so he'll play it out in his actions instead of his words and emotion. Men need to be coached and mentored. And I think I can do a really good job in doing that with them.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for the work you're doing and shaping those young minds. And
Thanks. Well, I love it. I tell folks often that this is by far the most rewarding work I've ever done. I've done the business, I've done the politics, I've done the sports, I've done the community stuff, but you are just actually touching people and bringing them to tears when they hear my story, or bringing me to tears when I tell my story. You're touching folks and working with them and helping them.
Keep up the good work.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah. So all's good. I feel like I'm totally back together again. I mean, minus the material trappings I had before. I mean, I do like to promote my book if I can. Celebrate the Gift of Life is the name of the book. And it really details and chronicles exactly what I went through from the emergency open heart surgery, where the chapter opens, to, finding, as the subtitle goes, back to a life of purpose and joy. So from the verge of suicide back to a life of purpose and joy. In the book, it really tells my story a lot more in depth than I talk about it. Real heart-wrenching and hard-hitting, raw, with emotion, but also a lot of helpful exercises at the end of every chapter that people can actually write in the book and express their feelings and their thoughts and answer introspective questions that will really help them as well. So it's Celebrating Your Gift of Life. You can find it, actually a signed copy by me, by going through my own website, which is celebratingyourgiftoflife.com, or through my foundation website, yourgiftoflife.org. I encourage people to pick it up. I'll ship it to you anywhere in the world, and that'd be great. Yeah, but all in all, life is good. And I tell folks, I'm just so glad to still be here, to even do this interview. I think about the times I was talking about or thinking about taking my life, and it just would have been over. Yeah. Posted something today about suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And as long as we keep that in mind, it's a temporary, no matter how bad it is, it's temporary. Eventually things will get better. But suicide is a permanent solution. There's no coming back. And I want people to know that and realize that and understand that. But you kind of lose grasp of your thoughtful mindset, your healthy mindset when you're in the middle of all this. You start becoming impulsive. Impulsiveness is a scary thing. I'm not very impulsive, but there are times when I was in the midst of all this, I was very impulsive. The mind just tells you, hey, just finish it. You got your plan already planned out. Go ahead and finish it. It just tells you 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Just get out of bed and go finish it. Get out of your misery. That's scary. And so you have to fight against those kind of things.
Really scary. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's where your counselors come in, your medical profession, maybe some prescribed medication, which I was on for about 6 months myself, just the kind of antidepressant, anti-anxiety, calm the brain chemistry down a little bit, lets you get some sleep at night. You got to go through those steps. Anybody who tries to go through it all by themselves, that much more difficult. And you probably don't really help your odds of making it through, trying to get through it by yourself, but you will help your odds by getting a team around you of good friends who really care about you and love you and remind you. Because when you're in the middle of that, you don't feel love. You don't give love, you don't feel love. You're just isolated. You are alone. You feel alone. And even though people are telling you how much you matter and how much you care, I talk about it in my video. My doctor was telling me, James, you take your life, people are going to miss you. They love you. They care about you. And I told him, I said, hey, doc, nobody cares about me. Nobody's going to miss me. And I was dead serious. I just couldn't feel it. Now I know. Now I know how much people would have missed me, how much they care and how much they love me. Now I know.
Yeah. We're glad because you got to talk to us and we got to talk to you.
Me too. It's a blessing. I want to keep on telling the story and sharing my experience and let people know that they can and they will make it through. Don't ever give up.
Thank you so much, James. We really appreciate you, doing this and talking to us.
Thank you so much, James.
You're so welcome.
We'd like to thank James for being on the show and for reminding us of the profound strength it takes to share personal struggles and the courage it requires to seek help when facing mental health challenges. James's story is not just about his time on the court, but also about the battles he fought off the court as well. These are battles that so many face in silence. To learn more about James's story and his work in promoting awareness of suicide prevention, make sure to check out his organization, Your Gift of Life Foundation. Make sure to also check out his book, Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy. We'll have links to both on the episode page on our website.
If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health or suicidal thoughts, please remember that you are not alone. Reach out to a friend, family member, or a mental health professional. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bound by the Cloak. As always, you can find us on social media. We are on X, we are on Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and once again, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.